There was an article that according to some famous people throughout the history of America proves that Americans are not racist, and that is very true, to some degree. Because we all know that we shouldn't paint everyone with a single brush, for good or bad things, because no matter how many people are against racism, there will still be plenty of them that are in fact racist, and that doesn't go for just Americans, it goes for many people worldwide. Anyways, an article stated, while monuments to the founder's genius have come under attack, the Jefferson Memorial is now being amended to acknowledge his possession of slaves, and there may be similar plans for the Washington Monument. It behooves us to examine the influential thinker's public statements about the abominable practice of slavery. Thomas Jefferson, drafter of the Declaration of Independence. King George III has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. Determined to keep open a market where men should be bought and sold, he has prostituted his negative for suppressing every legislative attempt to prohibit or restrain this execrable commerce. George Washington, the first President of the United States. I can only say that there is not a man living who wishes more sincerely than I do, to see a plan adopted for the abolition of it, but there is only one proper and effectual mode by which it can be accomplished, and that is by legislative authority, and this, as far as my suffrage will go, shall never be wanting. James Madison, drafter of the U.S. Constitution. We have seen the mere distinction of color made in the most enlightened period of time, a ground of the most oppressive dominion ever exercised by man over man. What has been the source of those unjust laws complained of among ourselves? Has it not been the real or supposed interest of the major number? John Jay, first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. It is much to be wished that slavery may be abolished. The honor of the states, as well as justice and humanity, in my opinion, loudly call upon them to emancipate these unhappy people. To contend for our own liberty, and to deny that blessing to others, involves an inconsistency not to be excused. John Adams, second President of the United States. The turpitude, the inhumanity, the cruelty and the infamy of the African commerce in slaves have been so impressively represented to the public by the highest powers of eloquence that nothing that I can say would increase the just odium in which it is and ought to be held. Every measure of prudence therefore ought to be assumed for the eventual total extirpation of slavery from the U.S. I have through my whole life held the practice of slavery in such abhorrence that I have never owned a N-word or any other slave. Patrick Henry, first Governor of Virginia and American statesman. I believe a time will come when an opportunity will be offered to abolish this lamentable evil. Everything we do is to improve it, if it happens in our day. If not, let us transmit to our descendants, together with our slaves, a pity for their unhappy lot and an abhorrence of slavery. George Mason, drafter of Virginia Declaration of Rights. Mr. Chairman, this is a fatal section, which has created more dangers than any other. The first clause allows the importation of slaves for 20 years. Under the royal government, this evil was looked upon as a great oppression, and many attempts were made to prevent it, but the interest of the African merchants prevented its prohibition. No sooner did the revolution take place, than it was thought of. It was one of the great causes of our separation from Great Britain. Its exclusion has been a principal object of the state, and most of the states in the Union. The augmentation of slaves weakens the states, and such a trade is diabolical in itself, and disgraceful to mankind, yet, by this Constitution, it is continued for 20 years. As much as I value a union of all the states, I would not admit the southern states into the Union unless they agree to the discontinuance of this disgraceful trade, because it would bring weakness, and not strength, to the Union. Benjamin Franklin, American philosopher, diplomat, and advisor on the Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution. Slavery is such an atrocious debasement of human nature, that its very extirpation, if not performed with solicitous care, may sometimes open a source of serious evils. The unhappy man, who has long been treated as a brute animal, too frequently sinks beneath the common standard of the human species. Under such circumstances, freedom may often prove a misfortune to himself, and prejudicial to society. Attention to emancipated black people, it is therefore to be hoped, will become a branch of our national policy, but, as far as we contribute to promote this emancipation, so far that attention is evidently a serious duty incumbent on us, and which we mean to discharge to the best of our judgment and abilities.